back on the Jours de Gloire train before I forget all the rules by playing something else. This is Almeida and Busaco 1810. This is an older game in the series. Great cover art on it. Lots of cavalry sabers being wielded on this one. This is the Jours de Gloire in the Peninsula, so Spain and France. This game, despite being titled Almeida and Busaco, actually has 3 battles in it, all on the smaller side. It's 1 counter sheet. It's also, as you can tell, published by Hexasim and not via Victis, but same designer, same artist. The reason for that is that the Jours de Gloire series has been published by many different publishers over the years. This is from 2010, I believe I mentioned, so it's a bit older. But all the same rules and stuff apply, and there hasn't really been much change to the system in the last 14 years. And I found this online for a pretty good price from someone selling it, and I wanted to pick it up because I really enjoy Jours de Gloire. So I thought we would play through at least 1, but maybe all 3 of the scenarios. They are quite small. And the Peninsular campaign is something I don't have a lot of knowledge or experience with, and I thought it would be nice to get some British and Spanish and Portuguese units into the fold. Speaking of into the fold, you can see with this Hexasim production, the combat tables and the terrain effects chart are in the middle of the folio fold out. So I can just leave this open here. I don't have to flip it back and forth. And because we're only playing on half a map, I can leave it on the table. Speaking of half a map, here we are. This is the Battle of Almeida in 1810. Here we can see all the units that the British are going to have for this scenario under Crawford. The map is a little dark. I'm not a big fan of the art style on this one in particular. But here's the city of Almeida, or the fortress with the fortified positions around it. There's no French units on the map because the French are all going to be coming in along this road here to try and push the British back from the city and drive them south past the convent, across this bridge of this river into this section of the map. And if they can do that, they're probably going to win. The reason there's a red marker there is that if the British / Portuguese / Spanish hold the river crossing by the end of the scenario, which is up to 10 turns, then they will score some points. So it's not going to be a super large scenario. 10 turns is kind of a lot, but with the number of action markers in the cup, it's going to go real fast. In fact, the first turn, there's only 2 markers in the cup, and that's for both British formations. We've got Crawford here in orange, and we've got the light cavalry assigned to him with some of their artillery here in gray. Ney and his French 6th Corps are going to be coming on over the next couple of turns. Here are the stacks, and we're going to add their chits to the cup. But by and large, this should not take me very long. The one thing I'm not a fan of is it's really hard to tell elevation. So you can see that the levels here are in brown, but it's hard to tell what the maximum elevation is. I think there's a pretty large elevation shift between here, maybe 2 or 3 levels. So I'm going to have to study the map and see. I think this is the highest, this sort of like highland here, and I think that's level 8 or 9. I think it's probably 9, given that the scale goes to 9 for this battle. But we may encounter some difficulties there, but I think once the British get pushed back, because I think they will, towards the river, it'll be a lot easier to tell what's going on. So if you haven't watched Jours de Gloire before, you should go check out my playthroughs of Rivoli and Zurich, which I've done on the channel. I'm not going to get into too many of the details describing the rules here. I'm just going to show you the main action of the Battle of Almeida. So let's get going. This is a good example of what a small scenario this is. The number of reinforcements the French brought on, I think it was 4 units all told. 3 cavalry and an artillery plus Ney. Not much happening. The French got 2 activations to the British 1, and Ney's cavalry just raced down this road, made an attack on on Crawford's left flank, the cavalry there. They were both disordered. They had to beat a retreat, and then we had some ineffective artillery fire from this gun here. So I suspect that this game is not going to take a while because it is so low density. But if the French do get close to Almeida, these 3 stationary guns are going to be a real problem. They're pretty powerful. And no one's allowed to enter the city, by the way. So the French are going to have to figure out a way to push the British back, or at least separate their forces to get them all the way down here. So onward we go. Well, most of that second turn was spent just kind of repositioning. The French waiting for reinforcements to show up, and they took their sweet time. They were delayed getting to the battlefield as the final activation of the turn where they finally got on there, and that the unpredictability of when they're going to show up kind of prevented the British from trying to attack. I mean, they don't really have the force to attack right now, but they thought maybe they could get an attack on the flank of this unit here, the cavalry and artillery, but they decided not to chance it. We did move up a second unit against here, but again, even Crawford's infantry is not strong enough to really make that attack worthwhile, because if they fail, they really compromise their position. So the British are just trying to hold fast, but the French are pouring on quick. I think my general strategy with the British is to hold position, and then when we get in range of artillery or potentially overwhelming attacks, back off into this scrub, which is a little bit harder to attack into. I believe. Oh, no, it's not. It's the orchards and palms that are... I don't see a lot of those on here. Well, anyways, if we can stay out of line of sight of the artillery, which we're doing, we'll be okay. And every time the British get to activate a formation, the artillery and Almeida get to fire. It's been really ineffectual so far. Both the Cav horse artillery and the Almeida stationary artillery got multiple shots over at Ney's cavalry and didn't do a single thing. So French just kind of going to bide their time. I mean, we're already on to turn 3, so we're starting the 3rd hour of battle. And the French are going to get another huge stack of units. And it's going to be real tough for the British here to try and hold out. All right, so turn 3, we're getting some interesting maneuver happening here. The British, thanks to some artillery fire from the stationary guns at Almeida, managed to force back Ney's right wing cavalry here. Force back. The cavalry kind of disengaged as the infantry approached to not suffer some adverse attacks. Just kind of giving ground. The main thrust of Ney's infantry is coming up the middle here, and you can see that Crawford's right flank has fallen back. So we're kind of doing like a twisting, turning motion right now. Got more reinforcements back here. But what's happened now, on the final activation of the turn, Lamont cavalry, Ney's cavalry under the command of Lamont, these 15th Chasseurs have decided to do a cavalry charge against one of those approaching infantry units. And the infantry unit just formed square, which is not good. It gives a really bad modifier to the cavalry attack. So this is kind of the first time we've had this recently. And now if the charging cavalry wants to call off the charge, they need to roll less than their charge number, which is 6 here. So let's see what happens with the French cavalry charge. They rolled a 9, so they have to continue the charge. And that's going to be a very nasty attack that they have to make. Probably not what they wanted. So if we count up the modifiers here, it is 3 to 2, so that's +1 for the French. The cohesion rating is 6 to the British is 5, so that's another +1. That's +2. We're in clear terrain, that's +3. Unfortunately, we're charging against a square. So that's -2. So they're only at +1 on this roll. So let's see what happens with the 43rd foot here, the British, Her Majesty's 43rd foot. We get not a great roll, -1, so that's a 2. That means that the attacker is disordered and then has to make a cohesion test. The cohesion test is a 5. That does pass, so they don't have to retreat a hex, although they may have wanted to. And now that unit has to make another cohesion test at the end of their charge to see if they're disordered again, and they are. So that's going to cause a rout to some of Ney's cavalry. And when cavalry routes, they go 3 hexes, 1, 2, 3. So they are running back away from the 43rd foot. So I thought that was pretty cool. I just wanted to show that to you. You expect, well, I was expecting, having played this now, through turn 3, the French should just kind of roll over the British, but it's not quite that simple given the terrain and some of the maneuvering that the British have undertaken. And immediately in the end phase of the turn, the 15th Chasseurs, who are routing, have to basically undergo route movement, and they just routed right off the map. So we have our first casualties from Lamott's cavalry. A cavalry charge that was repulsed by a square, and then that unit just routed right off the map. They didn't like what they saw there. So this unit stays in square until its next activation, at which point it can spend all its movement points to get out of square. It's probably going to want to do that because there are some bad penalties if you get attacked by infantry while you're in square. The one thing I should note here is that you can see some of the markers in this game are bright orange. This is the old style Jours de Gloire markers. I actually, as compared to Via Victis, I actually prefer these because they stand out a lot easier on the map. Since they're bright orange. You may remember that the EC game from this series that was in C3I several years ago also used the orange markers. But once Via Victis took over, they made them sort of a more beige color that matched the units, and it was really hard to tell sometimes which units had markers on them or not, because at first glance they just looked like they were the same colors. So anyways, just thought I'd point that out. Well, Ney's infantry just blew a hole right through the British line along the high ground here using a bayonet charge. Routed Crawford and one of his Portuguese allies. They're running past the Franciscan convent down here. A lot of disorders this turn to the British, some to the French as well. The Almeida flank is still pretty secure, but the French can kind of bypass it at this point. The line of resistance up through this ground is basically non-existent at this point, so they just got to mop up. And as soon as they can get these reinforcements into the fight, I think it's going to get even worse for the British, and we've got more reinforcements coming on this turn, the final batch for the French as we begin the halfway point of the game. This was coming eventually. You can just tell the way the scenario is set up. You can tell that the British are going to break and run as soon as they get some bad results against them, and that's what happened. The fixed gun emplacements in Almeida are no joke. They finally came online this turn and caused some huge chaos in the French infantry advance, routing a couple of units. We had a failed cavalry charge here that disordered the remaining cavalry, French cavalry on the right. And basically, if the French come anywhere near Almeida, it's probably pretty dangerous. And that's why you can see that Ney has shifted over his advance to sort of his left flank, and is probably going to do the same with these reinforcements coming up this road. So there's just so many French, it's really hard to stymie their advance in all portions of the map. Crawford did manage to get some of his forces rallied, and then we did have some rifle fire from the 95th Rifles here that was pretty effective. There's a chit that you pull that causes a cohesion test in any unit within 2 hexes of that unit, and it routed one of the French light infantry back over here. So we're kind of getting sort of this like salient around the town, and the French are having to come around this way to try and press the advance. We'll see if Crawford can create a defensive line of some fashion this turn. There are sort of these slopes here that would cause melee attacks across them to be pretty difficult, which is why you can see, I forget which division this is. That is Mermet's division lined up across it. And we're just going to keep going. We're halfway through the game, and the French are already almost to the river, so I think they're feeling pretty good about their chances. They did get the second activation shit back here. Unfortunately, because they're so far away from Ney, they're going to be moving at half movement speed unless I want to roll for a full activation, which could potentially mean nothing for them. I'm not sure what it's a 3 or less, so it's a 40% chance. Not sure I want to take that risk. I'd rather just be slow and steady, given how well the French are doing when they're not taking fire from emplaced artillery. So on we go, second half of the game. French have pushed the Anglo-Portuguese back across the Coa River here, well, at least partially. We've still got some units out of command on this side, but the French don't want to come near the city. I guess historically the French were just trying to surround Almeida to besiege it, and they're doing a pretty good job here. I believe the siege started the very next day, so it looks like they swiped aside the resistance, and this battle is kind of covering that opening approach. The French did manage to rally their routed units, except for one of them. So it's looking like it's going to be a pretty healthy French, at least control of the battlefield, healthy French. But they did eliminate a couple of Portuguese units this turn. And we're just trying to regroup as the British, just trying to figure out a way to stop them from having control of this hex by the end of the game. That's really the role now. Incidentally, British units who are routed on this side of the river don't actually move during the rout phase. They can stay on this side of the river kind of indefinitely until they rally. So we're going to try. And actually, during the rally phase, you can move kind of in any direction. So we may do something like that so that We can hopefully rally next turn. Yeah, that's what I got. I do got to drive this French unit off because that's French victory points at the end of every turn that they hold that hex. Well, by 2 o'clock, Ney has mopped up any of the resistance that he was facing from the Anglo-Portuguese and sweeping them from the field. Just a ton more casualties here for the French, including Crawford himself. That means that all Anglo-British or Anglo-Portuguese units will be out of command for the rest of the game. And I'm just going to call it here, even though there are 3 more turns to play. It's pretty clear the French have a victory in Almeida, as they did historically. I'm a little confused why this scenario was chosen for this game, because it's quite unbalanced. I can't imagine it'd be very fun to not play the Anglo-Portuguese in this scenario. The French just have the unit power to just blow through the defenses, such as they are. I guess maybe if I had taken up space around the town and forced the French to come fight me in range of the guns, but like the French were on me before I could even move over there, and they just kind of like penetrated the center and routed everyone. They have too many units, and they're also really good, and they rally pretty easily. So fairly one-sided scenario. And confusing to me that they put this in here. This turned into a siege of the city the day after, as I mentioned. So maybe that would have been better. I don't know. But it was fairly quick to play, so I'm not going to complain too much. And we're going to move on to the next scenario in this package, which is Busako, which is a bit bigger and I think probably a little bit more interesting.